Hi, welcome. My name is Farzad Misbahi and I worked for Tesla for 4 years, ending my career as a program manager. In today's video, I'd like to discuss Elon Musk becoming Time's Person of the Year in 2021. Congrats, dude. Well done. Well deserved. I guess for a lot of us that have been following Elon and Tesla and SpaceX and a bunch of his other companies, this day probably comes as no surprise. Super well deserved. He's somebody that has been doing a lot of great things around electric vehicles, space travel, and all these other things for a while. And this is yet another situation where it looks like mass media or the, I guess, zeitgeist is starting to realize just how big of an impact that he's having on us as a human species and what have you. So yeah, it's an exciting day. And from my perspective, I'd like to sort of go through, kind of outline what Elon, I guess, means to me from somebody who's been following him for a while and all the things he's doing, having worked at Tesla, kind of my perspective on how I view this day and things like that. And then I also like to explore what this could potentially mean in the future. So what are the things that could stem from this announcement today and how he might be perceived 15, 20 years down the line, right? Because I think today sort of feels like a fuse has been lighting for the last, call it 10, 15 years. For me, today seems like a rocket's about to take off. It just seems like we're just getting started. So I really came to know Elon back from 2012, 2013 when the Model S first came out, and I started taking an interest in investing. And so I saw this guy that's, driving this really cool car around that happens to be electric. It seemed very new and very cool. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, let's follow him and see what he does. And then I started getting obsessed, as I'm sure a lot of you did. Elon Musk videos, Tesla videos, SpaceX videos on YouTube, all these crazy content that this person is doing. And I became really captivated by his leadership, right, on those fronts. And a few years later, in 2017, I was lucky enough to join the company, and then I saw that from an insider's perspective on how he led the company, the different people that he surrounds himself with, and the amount of talent and people that really look at him the same way that I looked at him, And then you add on top of that the community around him, the fans, the owners, people that really aspire to be somebody like Elon Musk. I think what has been a very big part of my life for the last few years, honestly. And it's just nice to have somebody like that is willing to lead relentlessly without any reservations and willing to make a lot of mistakes while he goes through that. I think it really humanizes him and makes him into a very positive example for what all of us should aspire to in a way, right? I'm not saying the guy's perfect. I'm not saying we should all absolutely do everything he does. Far from it. But his net positive to humanity can't be ignored. And I think this timepiece does that pretty well. I read the whole article. I watched the video. You could tell that they're trying to be very balanced about how they try to just sort of communicate Elon to the public. There are a few things in there that I'm like, why, it's kind of crap. Like around the autopilot thing, somebody, was like, okay, well, he calls this thing autopilot, but it's not really autopilot. And if you look at the definition of autopilot and how it's used in flying planes, it seems like it's exactly autopilot. But anyway, that's besides the point. You can tell that Elon's really starting to infiltrate the public a lot more. I think him becoming the richest person in the world had a huge part in that. I think the success in Tesla is having a huge part in that. SpaceX sending the first company to send private citizens around orbit was a big deal. These seemingly humongous things that he's achieving here on a very fast cadence, I think has really helped him propel him into this position that he's in. But I really think it's just getting started. I really, really think it's just getting started. And I think it'd be sort of a fun exercise to think about, okay, so what are the things that are coming up now, right? Elon is now Time's Person of the Year 2021. It seems like a huge achievement, but what else is coming down the pike, right? What else is going to happen here in the next 15 years or so that's going to shape the discussion around him? And I think a lot of that is going to materially impact how the stock price reacts on, for Tesla, how people perceive SpaceX, how people perceive his other companies, how people perceive him as a person. We have yet to see a lot of that pan out. And so some things that may happen in the next 15 years. Elon Musk becomes the first trillionaire. Tesla becoming, a $5 trillion company in the next 5 years, 10 years. Apple's already at 3 trillion. It's probably not hard to imagine that Apple will probably double in the next 5 years. So call that 6 trillion. And the growth that Tesla's seeing right now in all the different markets that they're in and all the different factories that they're building, it's probably not hard to imagine that Tesla's going to get to that point as well at some point. Largest company in the world, right? 6 trillion, 8 trillion. That will take Elon Musk's net worth from 250 billion, 300 billion today. You can say you can roughly 5x that, 4x that, 3x that. That's roughly anywhere between 750 billion to 900 billion if you 3x it. And then if you 4x it, he's at a trillion. So it seems inevitable, and it seems like it's definitely going to happen. First private company to reach the moon with SpaceX, seems obvious. First private company operating on the moon. It's probably not too far of a thought to think that the first private company on the moon, especially given Elon's background around manufacturing, wouldn't be the first private company on the moon making something, right? That'd be pretty cool. I think that's definitely going to happen. So then add that to his list of accolades. First private company to reach Mars, not a secret. First private company operating on Mars, again, follow the same example as the moon. Once you get to Mars, you need to colonize, you need to start building stuff. Who's best equipped to build stuff? Probably Elon and his companies, manufacturing expert, makes sense. Largest vehicle maker in the world. If you follow Tesla's trajectory and you think, okay, so about 1 million cars per year now, and they want to keep building these different factories across the world, why wouldn't they become the biggest car manufacturer in the world? And if you actually want to look into this a little bit more, I have created a video where I outline for the next 15 years what I think Tesla's price is going to be from a stock perspective. And I outline how many cars it can sell. So I'll link that somewhere on the video here and in the description below. Check it out. I think it's got some cool information in there. Most valuable company in the world. Walking through that first example, if they match Apple's market cap or exceed it, especially based on my previous link that I posted about the Tesla stock price, it seems inevitable. Largest company in space. Think about what SpaceX is doing, shooting satellites for everybody, sending people to the moon, sending people to Mars, sending people to the International Space Station. Starlink, right? The internet company he's looking to make, seems pretty obvious. Largest provider of sustainable energy. So you think about the moat around batteries that Tesla has today, and they have the cheapest battery with the best performance. It appears to be the case. Why wouldn't they provide energy to everybody using that technology? So utility scale solar, harvesting people's solar energy from their roofs and putting them into batteries in the garage. It's not inconceivable to think that they're going to essentially control the entire sustainable energy market. Largest provider of internet on Earth, Starlink, right? We just talked about that. Largest internet provider on Mars. He's going to be the first one there, most likely. So why wouldn't he bring Starlink? The creator of first ever fully commercial self-driving software for vehicles, full self-driving for Tesla, all the work that they're doing there. They have a fleet of, call it 1 million plus cars on the road right now that are collecting data like maniacs. You look at ARC and Sandy Monroe and a bunch of other great content on YouTube sort of covering this moat that Tesla has around full self-driving. More than likely, Elon and his companies are going to be responsible for the first truly commercial full self-driving software. Seems like a huge deal for humanity. Think about all the lives that's going to save. Think about how much more cost efficient that's going to make driving, how many more people are going to have access to driving, so on and so forth. And then, this one's just for fun and not really sure if that's going to happen. And Elon has talked about this a little bit, but maybe the first company ever to give a paraplegic full control of their limbs again. That seems like a humongous achievement from a humanity perspective, right? Somebody who you would think has lost all limb function and cannot walk again, use their arms again. If Neuralink is able to make this happen, if anything, I would argue that's probably the greatest achievement out of all of these, save maybe sending people to Mars and extending the light of consciousness, as he likes to say. That seems like magic. And the amount of lives that's gonna change, and you think about the downstream effects of that, if you're able to do that, how many other things can you do with that technology, right? So maybe it's restoring, not just a paraplegic, but if your arm doesn't work anymore, your leg doesn't work anymore, or maybe some brain function, right, that previously worked but no longer works. The potential seems ridiculous there, and if he's able to achieve that, add that again to his belt, right? And actually, I would also love to hear what you guys think would be something that Tesla or Elon or SpaceX or whoever is able to achieve here in the next 15 years or so. Like what are the firsts that Elon's going to be able to achieve that seem to be very, very big deals, right? What are those big impact achievements that he thinks can create? I would love to hear your perspective on that as well. But if you take all these things and then you assume, okay, so Elon's 50 today, what are the chances that Elon makes it to 70? Hopefully he kind of keeps a relatively good health and doesn't end up killing himself by working too much, which is honestly probably my biggest concern for him, is to make sure that he takes care of himself as best he can. But it's probably not inconceivable to think that he's going to make it to 70. So that gives Elon 20 years, not just Elon and his companies and all the people that work with him, give him 20 years to make even more stuff happen, right? The list that I just rattled off doesn't seem that insane, especially if you take the timepiece that they just did and you go through all the different achievements he's had, bringing SpaceX to become the largest provider of space services essentially in the world from scratch, the largest EV maker in the world and potentially the largest car manufacturer in the world from scratch, PayPal, Solar City, Neuralink, Boring Company. You take all these achievements and then you say, okay, Elon, okay, so here's 20 more years and you have the most money out of anybody in the world and you have a significantly larger base following you that's willing to give you support than you had before. Seems like sky's the limit, and that's sort of a pun, I guess, but it does seem like we're going to a place where we're just getting started, where Elon's just getting started, where his companies are just getting started. And that's hard to wrap your mind around because so much has already been achieved with Tesla and SpaceX and all his other ventures that he started in the past as well. So much has already been achieved, but it seems like everything's in front of him now, right? Everything's in front of him. And this rocket ride that we're on now, where the fuse has lit and now we're sort of going into the stratosphere here, it seems like we're at a point now, it's an inflection point. And I think this speaks larger to him as a person and what he's doing and sort of the passive impact that he's having on society. So the way I think about that is Elon is somebody that mostly is viewed as a person, in my opinion, that's mostly viewed as a person that just makes stuff and he says crazy stuff on Twitter, right? So you take our 15-20% of the following base, say you have 100 people, 20 of those people are us, the Tesla community, sort of the people that follow Elon and are very huge fans of what he does and what his companies do, right? But then you take the other 80%, that 80% is really just like, oh, Elon makes cool cars. Oh, he's, do you see that rocket thing? Oh, he said this crazy thing on Twitter, it got him in trouble, right? But I think what's going to start happening and what this timepiece I think alludes to is that the general public is really going to start viewing Elon a little bit more how we view him, right? So recognizing the fact that he's trying to lead a very large scale cause, not just for America, but for the entire world. It's humanity. He's sort of bringing all of us together in a way. I'm trying to be very measured and balanced about how I think about this, because I do think the long-term potential of this can bring a lot of unity in the world. And I'm not saying Elon's going to become this political figure or, he's going to become this sort of candidate that, I don't know, just it's not political in any sense, but leading by example and seeing somebody that's so unapologetic in going after what he wants to go after, that he believes is best for humanity, I think that's a big deal. And I think the more exposure he gets based on that versus his Tesla cars or his rockets or whatever, I think it's going to create this sort of mentality that I think a lot of us in the community have, where we're looking at somebody as an example of what a human being can do if they really, really, really apply themselves, right? Forget the weaknesses that he has, forget maybe he's not the most empathetic guy. Maybe he's a little crazy in a way, Maybe you shouldn't work 80, 100, 120 hours a week nonstop for your whole life. Maybe these are unhealthy things, right? But the net impact that he's had on humanity so far cannot be understated. And I do think that as a people, especially in America, I think we're ready to embrace somebody like that, right? Somebody who's not perfect, who has flaws, but his net impact to humanity appears to be well in the good category versus the bad category, right? You think about his ability to break cancel culture You know, how many times has he been, how many times have they tried to cancel the guy on Twitter? Or, you know, there's these different sort of articles that were coming out, the way that they tried to bankrupt him when he was building Tesla and all the different failures he's had that were very public. It does seem like he's overcome all these things. And I do think there is a sort of a movement around this idea, maybe not Elon himself, but this idea that it's okay for us to embrace somebody who has flaws, that it's okay for us to embrace somebody who is trying to do the right thing, but won't always, you know, come across as the most perfect person, right? Getting away from embracing perfection and instead embracing humanity. And I think that's what Elon really stands for. He's not perfect. He's far from perfect, but he's good for humanity. And I think long term, and what this timepiece really encapsulates and sort of a precursor for, is that I think society as a whole is going to become much more accepting of those kinds of people. You know, where cancel culture is not really going to be the driving force behind people becoming actual goods for society, but just results. You know, what are you doing for humanity? What are the things that you're working on that are going to get us farther, right? I think that's going to really become a much bigger part of the discussion. And maybe that's me being naive, and maybe that's me having, you know, wishful thinking or whatever you want to call it. But it does seem like we are going towards that, is that people are going to recognize net good and net positive to humanity is a good thing. And grace and tolerance and forgiveness are going to become a much bigger part of the discussion and are going to be much more accepted. Because, you know, all of us behind closed doors, we think that way. You know, with family and friends, we're much more forgiving in private than we are on social media. That's what it seems like to me, at least, you know? We're much more measured. And there's a lot more of us that think that way than the extremes, right? But I do think it's fascinating to think about that. But anyway, to wrap up this video, congrats, Elon. You deserve it. I do think this is just the beginning for him and the people around him and what they can achieve. And I'm personally super excited to see that come through. And yeah, it's going to be a very exciting time. If you like this video, I would love it if you give me a like. If you want to see more content from me, feel free to subscribe. If you want to become a patron, I have a link to my Patreon in the description below. And before we wrap up here, I'd actually like to play a little riff for you guys. I've been getting a lot of questions about my guitars. I played a little riff on one of my videos before. It seems like people want me to end these videos with some riffs. So I'll play a riff for you guys, see if you guys can guess the artist and the song. And if you do, drop it in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. I am going to fucking kill everything that has wires on it.